Katniss and Peeta just got picked to participate in the Hunger Games and are heading to the capital. Their experienced mentor gives them tips on how to survive the games, and surprisingly, be good with a bow and arrow isn't one of them. Stay tuned to find out the secret to surviving and learn some conversational English phrases that will boost your English skills. First, we'll watch part of the clip with subtitles.
You'd freeze to death first.
No, because I light a fire.
Well, that's a good way to get killed.
What's a good way to get killed?
Oh, Joy, why don't you join us? I was just giving some life-saving advice.
Like what?
Oh, I was just asking about how to find shelter.
Which would come in handy if, in fact, you were still alive.
How do you find shelter?
Pass the jam.
How do you find shelter?
Give me a chance to wake up, sweetheart. This mentoring is very taxing stuff. Can you pass the marmalade?
Now we'll break down the video and learn key vocabulary.
You'd freeze to death first.
When you freeze something, you put it at below freezing temperatures, which is 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. For instance, to make ice, we freeze water. But here, Haymitch is talking about dying from cold temperatures. So adding to death here just emphasizes the fact that you would in fact die from freezing. It's common to have other expressions in English using to death that doesn't literally mean dying though. You can say scared to death to exaggerate how scared you are or were, like I'm scared to death of flying.
You'd freeze to death first.
No, because I light a fire.
Here, Peeta is literally talking about the action of lighting a fire or making a fire, so he doesn't die from hypothermia. But there's another common expression in English to light a fire under someone. It's an idiom that means to get someone to act or work more quickly or enthusiastically. It's a common practice for a coach, teacher, or boss to try and inspire their players, students, or workers. For example, the coach tried to light a fire under the team so they'd start winning games, meaning he tried to push them to work harder. So next time someone is slowly getting ready to go out, you can light a fire under them by shouting, "I'm leaving in 5 minutes, with or without you." That ought to get them moving quicker.
No, because I light a fire.
Well, that's a good way to get killed.
What's a good way to get killed?
A good way means to a high standard. It's a compliment used to tell someone that they are doing a good job at something. Like, that's a good way to organize a spreadsheet. But here, the mentor Haymitch is saying it sarcastically and doesn't really think Peeta's idea of lighting a fire is good. When he sarcastically says that's a good way to die, it's basically the same as that's a bad way of surviving the game. To get killed means to die because of someone or something else, which happens a lot in the Hunger Games. It's really common to use get with a past participle verb, like he needs to get started on the project. You can also use it in the past tense by changing get to got, like the trees got damaged in the storm yesterday.
Well, that's a good way to get killed.
What's a good way to get killed?
Oh, Joy, why don't you join us?
Joy is a feeling we have that means extreme happiness and the opposite of sorrow, which is extreme sadness. So normally when you'd say, "Oh, joy," you'd be expressing how happy you are about something. But Haymitch is being sarcastic again here. He's not actually happy that Katniss is joining the conversation. You can tell what he means by his tone. It's the same as the phrase, "Oh, great," which in a happy tone means you're excited about something, but in a negative tone means you're not happy about it. When you say the phrase, "Why don't you join us?" you're inviting someone to be a part of your group or sit down with your group. The phrase, "Why don't?" is typically used for invitations, as in, "Why don't we go get a pizza?" It's similar to saying you're welcome to join, or feel free to come along. It's a nice way to include someone who isn't in your conversation or group.
Oh, Joy, why don't you join us? I was just giving some life-saving advice.
Advice is guidance or recommendations from someone to help you with something you will do in the future. Typically, you'd ask advice from someone older than you or someone who has been in that exact same situation as you. It can help you overcome the situation easier or better. For instance, I asked my parents for advice on how to find a job. They can help you because they have looked for jobs before and it can make your job search easier. We usually use advice with the verb give, like I need to give him some advice, or do you have any advice to give? So life-saving advice is guidance or recommendations that will save your life or keep you alive.
I was just giving some life-saving advice.
Like what?
Oh, I was just asking about how to find shelter.
Shelter is a place that gives temporary protection from bad weather or danger. This can be a proper structure similar to a house or even just a tree or log. For instance, if you're on a hike and it starts to rain, you should find shelter until the rain stops. The difference between a home and a shelter is the fact that it's temporary. It probably doesn't have furniture or your favorite art pieces or any of those things that add a homey touch to your house and make it feel like your home. So in a survival situation like the Hunger Games, finding shelter is so important if they want to live.
I was just asking about how to find shelter.
Which would come in handy if, in fact, you were still alive.
Come in handy is a common English expression that's similar to will be helpful or useful in the future, like save her business card that may come in handy later. We can also use handy by itself, meaning convenient to handle or use. Like this new travel app is super handy. A synonym would be useful. So what Haymitch means here is that most of the tributes die right at the start of the games, so they don't live long enough to have a chance to look for shelter.
Which would come in handy if, in fact, you were still alive.
How do you find shelter?
Pass the jam.
Pass means to move or cause to move in a specified direction. For instance, you pass the ball to your teammates in soccer. Or if you need a pen, you can say, "Can you pass me a pen?" In this context, you can also say, "Hand me the jam," since Haymitch wants Katniss to grab the jam and give it to him. Be careful using hand me though, because depending on your tone, it can come across rude, whereas pass is a lot more polite. Be careful if you're watching this clip on YouTube and relying on the subtitles because they're not always accurate. Like in this clip, the subtitles say "passed the jam," not "pass the jam," which doesn't really make sense. That's why I recommend using FluentU, a handy app for learning English through real-world videos. FluentU always has accurate and interactive subtitles, so if we don't recognize a word or phrase, we can click directly on it to see the definition and real-world example videos.
That doesn't mean you should know what to expect.
Plus, you can take a personalized quiz so you can practice your fluency and pronunciation to sound just like a native. If that's your goal, you should check out the 2-week free trial link for FluentU in the description. And FluentU is currently having a sale, so it's perfect timing.
How do you find shelter?
Pass the jam.
How do you find shelter?
Give me a chance to wake up, sweetheart.
Typically, the stress would be on the verb find, like how do you find shelter? But here, Katniss is emphasizing the question even more because Haymitch ignores her, so the stress is on the auxiliary verb, do. So instead of asking how do you find shelter, she asks how do you find shelter? When you say give me a chance to someone, you're asking them to give you an opportunity. For instance, come on, go on a date with me, give me a chance. You're asking someone to go out with you and give you an opportunity to prove why you'd be a great match for that person. Sweetheart is a term of endearment for someone you're in a romantic relationship with. It's important to note that terms of endearment are only for people who you are really close to and have a special relationship with. If you randomly call someone honey or sweetie, they might think it's a bit weird or even offensive. Kind of what Haymitch is doing here to Katniss. He's being sarcastic and it could be seen as offensive. Some other popular terms of endearment are babe, sweetie, or honey. You'd use babe in a romantic relationship, and sweetie and honey can be used both for romantic relationships or just loving, friendly relationships, like your child or best friend.
Give me a chance to wake up, sweetheart. This mentoring is very taxing stuff.
A mentor is someone who helps you through something and gives you advice. It's common to have a mentor at a new job who helps you transition into the role, trains you, and answers any questions you have. You could also use advisor or guide. One of the most famous movie examples of this is Yoda being a mentor to Luke Skywalker in Star Wars and teaching him how to be a Jedi and use the Force. So mentoring is the verb form of mentor. If you are a mentor to someone, you are mentoring them, which is what Haymitch is doing here. Since he has won the Hunger Games before, he is mentoring Katniss and Peeta to try and help them survive. Taxing in this context means physically or mentally tiring or demanding. For instance, running a marathon is taxing. The most common use for the word tax or taxed is the percentage of something that you pay to your government. Like you pay sales tax on buying items in a store, or income tax based on how much money you make. So in this clip, Haymitch is saying that trying to help and guide Katniss and Peeta to win the Hunger Games is exhausting or tiring.
This mentoring is very taxing stuff. Can you pass the marmalade?
That is mahogany!
Mahogany is a type of wood like oak, pine, or walnut. Mahogany is considered one of the most luxurious and beautiful woods in the world, so it tends to be expensive. So the reason why Effie makes this comment is not to tell Katniss what type of wood the table is made of, but to let her know that she just damaged something expensive, so she should be careful. It's common for people to describe expensive things by their material to show how expensive or luxurious it is. For example, look at this crystal chandelier. Yes, it is made of crystal, but the real point of telling someone that is to let them know it's very expensive.
Can you pass the marmalade?
That is mahogany.
Look at you. Just killed a placemat.
You can use the phrase look at you, look at me, or look at that to literally bring attention to something or someone. Usually it's a way to show you're impressed or entertained by what you're looking at. For instance, look at you all dressed up. But here, Haymitch is being sarcastic. He's not at all impressed by her almost stabbing him in the hand out of anger. Placemat is something you put on a table so you can put your plate or bowl on top of it. It protects the table from watermarks, heat damage, or food stains. Since a placemat is not alive, it's impossible to kill it. Haymitch is making a joke here and acting like she did something impressive, like killing an animal in the Hunger Games, but really she just stabbed a placemat with a knife.
Look at you. Just killed a placemat. You really want to know how to stay alive?
We use the word really to add emphasis to something, like it's really hot or I'm really happy. And when you ask someone if they want to know something, you're checking to see if they want this information or not. So when you put it all together, you really want to know is emphasizing the question, similar to do you really want to do this? In this case, Haymitch is using it as a rhetorical question, which is a question that is not meant or expected to have an answer. Another example of a rhetorical question is how could I be so stupid? You don't actually want someone to explain how you were stupid. You're just expressing how upset you are about the stupid decision. So Haymitch uses the rhetorical question because he obviously knows that they want to know how to stay alive in the Hunger Games, so the answer yes isn't needed. For instance, if you really want to know what we learned in today's video and actually remember it, make sure to download our free PDF review guide using the link in the description.
You really want to know how to stay alive? You get people to like you.
A similar phrase to get someone to do something is to convince them to do something. It's more than just asking someone for something. For instance, can you get my brother to fix my car? You're asking someone to see if they can convince them to fix your car. In this situation, getting someone to like you is pretty difficult because you can't force someone to like you. You can try to get people to like you by being friendly and nice to them, but ultimately it's up to them whether they like you or not.
You get people to like you. Oh. Not what you were expecting.
Expecting is regarding something as likely to happen, like I was expecting to get the job, meaning you thought there was a good chance you would get that job. There's another meaning for this when we're talking about being pregnant. In this case, when someone says, I'm expecting, it means you are pregnant and expecting to have a baby in the near future. So Haymitch is asking another rhetorical question here, because he knows that wasn't the answer Katniss was expecting. She thought he would say something about needing hunting or survival skills. So let's keep watching and see what Haymitch means by this.
Oh, not what you were expecting. When you're in the middle of the games and you're starving or freezing, some water, a knife, or even some matches can mean the difference between life and death.
Starving literally means suffering or dying from hunger, but it's really common in everyday English to hear people say, I'm starving, to emphasize how hungry they are. They aren't actually starving or in danger of dying, but they're just really hungry. This is known as an extreme adjective, and it will really help you avoid repeating very all the time and also boost your vocab. Here are some other common ones. Very hungry is starving. Very rich is wealthy. Very tired is exhausted. Very cold is freezing, and very small is tiny. Matches are literally tools used for starting a fire. Difference means the way two things being compared are not the same. Like there's a difference between these two houses. So here we have completely opposite things, life and death, or surviving the Hunger Games and not surviving. When someone uses the phrase the difference between life and death, they are trying to emphasize how serious the situation is and how if they make the wrong decision, it could result in failure or death. Subscribing to our channel might not be the difference between life and death, but it could be the difference between learning English and not. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on upcoming videos like Learning English with Bridgerton.
When you're in the middle of the games and you're starving or freezing, some water, a knife, or even some matches can mean the difference between life and death. And those things only come from sponsors.
A sponsor is an individual or organization that pays for something. You can also use the word donor. A common example of this is the name of a company on a professional soccer jersey. They are sponsoring the team and paying for things to get advertising in return. In the Hunger Games, the wealthy people who live in the capital can sponsor certain participants and send them help or helpful items while they're in the games.
And those things only come from sponsors. And to get sponsors, you have to make people like you. And right now, sweetheart, you're not off to a real good start.
To be off to a good start means to be successful in the early stages of doing something. This phrase references a race. When a race starts, you can see which participants started well and which of them didn't. So we can use this when talking about other things in life too, like dating. Their relationship is off to a good start, meaning they've started their relationship strong. It's really common to use sports metaphors in everyday English, like drop the ball or give it your best shot. For more of these, check out our Ted Lasso video. So here, Haymitch is saying that Katniss has already made some people not like her, which is going to hurt her chances of getting sponsors to help her in the games. So she's really not off to a good start. Now, let's test your knowledge and watch the clip without subtitles.
You'd freeze to death first.
No, because then I'd light a fire.
Well, that's a good way to get killed.
What's a good way to get killed?
Oh, Joy, why don't you join us? I was just giving some life-saving advice.
Like what?
No, I was just asking about how to find shelter.
Which would come in handy if, in fact, you were still alive.
How do you find shelter?
Pass the jam.
How do you find shelter?
Give me a chance to wake up, sweetheart. This mentoring is very taxing stuff. Can you pass the marmalade?
That is mahogany.
Look at you. Just killed a placemat. You really want to know how to stay alive? You get people to like you. Oh, not what you were expecting. When you're in the middle of the games and you're starving or freezing, some water, a knife, or even some matches can mean the difference between life and death. And those things only come from sponsors. And to get sponsors, you have to make people like you. And right now, sweetheart, you're not off to a real good start.
In this scene from Harry Potter, Harry meets a pretty interesting and dangerous creature in his magical creatures class at Hogwarts. It's no Hunger Games, but it may be just as dangerous. I'll see you over there to keep learning some useful English vocab.